Dan's Fuel Works in Seattle. I'm going to be discussing this happy thing as well as keeping your diesel healthy.
I think we'll just start. We got a little short video, and most people are pretty excited about this, so do that, and then I'll start my talk. Production done.
Hey there, your kids. This is Dan Freeman of Duncan and Biodiesel in beautiful Seattle, Washington. Here we have a 09 Jetta Sport Wagon common rail with the particulate trap that's been running B99 for almost all of its life, which is 34,000 miles. So, yeehaw. Let's look at the exhaust pipe. This exhaust pipe is amazing. Where is it? Number one. Here it is. Okay, look inside. Looks like it's brand new. Normally it'd have all kinds of soot and garbage and gunk in there. Absolutely nothing. So it really is a clean diesel. That particulate trap works. And evidently it works pretty well with biodiesel. I talked to these folks before they bought the car and asked them how they're going to use it. He's a commuter, so he drives long distances, so the vehicle will reach its full operating temperature instead of just a bunch of short trips. I think that's where the big problem and the fear comes from using B99 in these cars. Biodiesel has a much higher flash point than regular diesel, so it won't flash off to vapor inside the motor to make it to the particulate trap where it needs to regenerate. We have the bag pump hooked up to this car. With 34,000 miles on it, it's only regenerated 3 times. And it's had no failed attempts. It's regenerated each time, which is where the problem comes from motor oil dilution or from having a plugged particulate trap. So this vehicle is successful. Let's look at the bag pump. Does that sound great? Quiet? These are fantastic. They've had almost no issues with this car at all. None fuel related. Of course, they've been buying good quality filtered fuel from me. There's been rumors of problems with the high pressure pumps on these going out. I think the main cause of that problem is plugged fuel filters. If you plug a filter, and the filter has to work against a vacuum, and that causes the pump to cavitate and then self-destruct. When the pump self-destructs, then it pushes its bits downstream to the injectors, and that gets really expensive. We've heard horror stories about fuel tank being filled full of metal bits. So, buy good quality fuel, good quality filter fuel. Change your filter often. It's worth the expense to change it. And biodiesel seems to help. Biodiesel is a great lubricity additive. That poor little pump has a lot of work to do. It gets the fuel pressure up to phenomenal pressures, and it's tiny and can't tolerate any bits of garbage in there. Use good fuel. Biodiesel seems to help, and have fun. These work great, especially if you are a commuter to long trips. Diesels aren't really meant for short trips. Have fun.
All right. You turn out to get that out of there. But sustainable energy needs a sustainable business plan, and the best way to do that is not to kill your customer. And it's pretty easy to do. The lack of education, poor fuel, things are out of your control. or if your customer has unreasonable expectations about what the fuel and what the car can do. Most of the problems that we've seen over the past decade now has been from unfiltered fuel. You know, just when they go to the gas station. Most fuel at gas stations in the States isn't filtered adequately. There's a filter on there to protect the meter on the pump, and that's pretty much it. You can get a high volume of contamination, dirt, water, bacteria, all kinds of things that aren't fuel. We've seen brand new cars with their first tank of fuel have enough crap in it to plug the filter. And people say, how often should I change my filter? You know, that's about, you know, well, how often are you going to eat day-old sushi? It just depends on what you put in it. Filters will hold, you know, maybe 2 tablespoons of contaminant. So if you put in half a gallon of water in your tank, you're going to have some issues. And plugged fuel filters lead to catastrophic expensive damage. Just like I said in the video there, almost all injection pump failures are caused from lack of fuel. The fuel is what lubricates the pump, and those pumps don't work well in a vacuum. Cavitation will destroy things. The 2000 to 2003 TDIs, if you run them too long with the plug filter, it'll ruin the injection pump. There's an advanced piston in there. It's a big steel piston. It looks, really significant metal, but it breaks apart from cavitation. So you want to, you can provide fuel for somebody. You need to make sure your fuel is high quality, that you don't have any questions about it. So that means filtering at every step, and doing some kind of testing so that you have confidence that it's okay. One of the favorite tests I like to do is just to put it, follow it in the refrigerator. Add it above its cold filter plug point. Leave it in there for a couple of days. If something separates out, then you've got an issue. Yes?
Quick question. What is the micron filtration on the Volkswagens?
Almost any common rail is going to be less than 5 microns. Most fuel stations are about 30 microns. So it's monstrous.
What's the orifice size of the injector?
It's, I have no idea. It's freaking small. And if the filters did pass things, that's kind of the problem that they have with the Duramaxes, is that it's very high pressure going through a very small hole, and it's abrasive. That's how a water jet works to cut things. So it just rips those things apart. Most of the problems with the new Volkswagens with the catastrophic failure, they talk about getting a rust in the fuel system. It's a plastic fuel tank. So that means the rust is put in there when they buy fuel. And that's something that really has to be watched out for, because you will get blamed. Because you're the different thing. You're the questionable part. So, yeah, you really have to cover your bases and make sure your fuel is good. It's easy to do that. You just need to keep a sample, put it in the refrigerator, see what it does. Run it in your own equipment, know what that batch does, and keep a sample of that. And if it's filtered, at every point, especially when it goes into the customer's tank, then that significantly helps. Yes?
How often do you recommend changing fuel filters when there's no obvious issue?
Well, if the vehicle is only getting good filtered fuel, that filter has nothing to do. And it depends on who it is and how they use that vehicle. Most of the time, you're not the only fuel source. If you are the only fuel source, you can, I still recommend, every oil change just to cover your bases. But, for myself, I don't change it. But I'm the guinea pig. And I want to see worst case scenario. And if I do plug a filter, I have one with me and I have tools to do it. You just want to be careful for your customer because you want it to work perfectly and flawlessly. You don't want, a woman with your kids breaking down. One of the other biggest things is reasonable expectations for your customer. We had a couple of years ago quite a rash of people that they bought a new TDI in 02 or 03, and 10 years later the car has 40,000 miles on it. They've only driven it for short trips, and the poor thing is beat up something terrible. And they take it into the dealer, and the dealer tells them it's biodiesel and tells them it needs $6,000 worth of repairs. It's basically because it didn't get driven. It got driven, short trips, like a mile at a time, for 40,000 miles, and it wasn't properly maintained. Owner's manual says they should have an oil change every 10,000 miles. So, over a decade, it's only had 4 oil changes. We say it needs to go in for service oil change like every 9 months. Even if it didn't get driven. There's all kinds of things. I've got a whole bunch of videos that talk about all the normal stuff that those cars need to make them last. Some of the sensors go bad, and it plugs the intake manifold, and that goes untreated, and that'll plug up the turbo, and it just goes, on and on. But it's a good car if it's used properly. And with the new ones, I just showed you a video that it works, but if you give it to one of those people who only drives it a mile at a time, it's not going to work. And it's going to be an expensive failure, and they're going to blame you and maybe get on the interweb and tell everybody in the world. So you can't afford to have any bad press about that. Yes, sir?
Are the fuels interchangeable? In other words, can you use regular petroleum? One fill up, next fill up, use B100?
You can, as long as it's good quality filtered fuel. But the issue is that you, as a biodiesel provider, don't have control over that other part. And typically what we see is our customers buying fuel from us. Then they go on vacation, and when they come back from vacation, if they didn't and start using biodiesel again, then they plug a filter. Or if the weather gets cold and they start blending. Or if they had loaned a car to somebody else. There's an epidemic of contaminated fuel. And since biodiesel will clean out your fuel tank, it won't tolerate anything else in there. Whatever's in the tank will end up in the filter. So you need to make sure that they know and understand that, and if they do fill up somewhere else, they're risking unsafe fueling. I had an article in Biodiesel Smarter about that. Hopefully that's still out there somewhere, and it talks about it. And you'll receive all the blame because Standard Petroleum is Standard Petroleum, and people can't imagine anything wrong with that. And it's ridiculous to me that people say, oh, but I bought it from Exxon. Oh, the Exxon Valdez, that's right. They're completely on top of your needs and concerns. And you know, it doesn't matter what the sign says. Those are individually owned stations. And most of the time, the tanks aren't maintained or things like that. And filters are a nuisance. Down in the States, in Washington's Department of Agriculture, that's in charge of fuel quality, they have one inspector for, I think, King County, which is a large area. So you have a complaint, it can take up to 3 weeks for him to get out there and take a sample. And then, you know, he doesn't do anything about it. He says, oh, yeah, you got an issue. But, you know, I think it cost $8,000 to redo the fuel system on a new TDI. And contaminated fuel isn't covered under warranty because Volkswagen didn't have any control over that, just like you didn't have any control over that. Yeah, and you know, it's just tremendously important that they're educated. If you have something written that talks about that, you know, what they should expect, you know, cold filter plug point, blending, and hopefully you have in your region a biodiesel friendly mechanic that you can send people to if they have an issue in the first place, instead of having it go to the dealer and the dealer blaming absolutely everything on biodiesel. It's to their advantage to do that. I mean, even if they sold the car so they could use biodiesel and said, oh yeah, it'd be great. Most of the dealers don't get paid hardly anything for warranty repairs. So you just need to make sure that you're completely stellar.
And two related questions. One is a plug filter generally something that's a gradual process, or is it more like, you know, you put some biodiesel after some diesel and it's like 5 minutes later it's cleaned up and it's back on the filter?
We've seen all things, but generally, like if you have a cold and your breathing is restricted, you need to run up a hill. You know, you can run up the hill, it might be okay, but you know, if it's really bad, you cardiac arrest.
Yeah, my related question is I think let's try to make it an aftermarket like pressure sensor or something on the other side of the filter, give
right.
an indication that things are going bad. They're not dead yet, but you're restraining your fuel injectors pump, and the filter's on its way out.
Yeah, that'd be a very good idea. The Mercedes, the Sprinter has that. Has a low fuel pressure triggers a check engine light, and then it goes into limp mode. And that is to save the pump, but Volkswagen doesn't have that, and most of the other brands don't. But that would be a good idea. Part of the problem with that would be that could trigger, you know, like an NTSB bulletin saying it was unsafe because there was reduced power. But what it really needs is a freaking large capacity fuel filter. If you guys have commercial trucks or buses or something like that, they have a large primary fuel filter, and then you have a secondary fuel filter. Like the Sprinter has a tiny, small micron fuel filter without heat that's 1/3 of the size of one in a Volkswagen. And the Sprinter is, you know, at least twice the size. So it goes through a significant amount of fuel. We recommend adding, you know, rake cores to those vehicles or somebody that's at risk. We got an article in Biodiesel Smarter about that also. And most of these are covered in the videos that we have. Was it, I guess it's just Dr. Dan's YouTube channel, Dr. Dan's Biodiesel YouTube channel. Yes, sir?
Does the type of feedstock for the meth ester matter?
Not too much. It's basically in temperature property, but all of them have a laxative effect and will clean out the fuel system. As long as the fuel is filtered whenever you handle fuel, it should be filtered at equal micron to what is going into the vehicle. And if you're a biodiesel retailer, you have control over what comes out of your tank, but not the other tank. And even with low-level blending, particularly to your question, if it is, there's lots of BQ 9000 ASTM fuel that has dropout at above cold filter plug point. And that will plug your fuel system, no matter what blend eventually, if it gets exposed to cooler temperatures. If it has a bit of tallow in it, or soy, can do that. I have a refrigerator and 3 garbage can fulls of samples of it separating out. So, the retailer needs to filter. All fuel needs to be filtered. I tried to work with the state about that. And as fuel injection advances, that's going to become more and more of an issue, because you do read and see a lot of failures due to contamination. But nobody ever mentions about filtering the fuel, and that would really help things along. Majorly, like if you have a retailer in the area, it'd be good to suggest filtering, or even install a filter for them, so that you can refer customers to them. Because there'll be times that you need fuel for blending. Yeah, so just to review, you need a sustainable business plan. And the biggest part of that is to not kill your customer, not do any damage there. Filter at every time that you transfer. Do the refrigerator test. You'll be amazed at how easy that is. And it's 100% accurate. Yeah, you don't have to worry as much about ASTM and all the other fancy tests. But just try it and see.
Because you'd see both water and glycerin in that test? Well,
water you'll see, period. But if you have something in there, it'll come out over time. There's also the shake test and 327 test. But this should be just to see if you have other issues that that don't come out. And it's easy, it's cheap. I just use like a little juice bottle, put some in it, and just let it sit. And it's pretty similar to what your customer would be exposed to. On the TDIs, the fuel pickup, the earlier ones, up to 2003, it has to suck fuel out of the tank. The fuel pickup, a little reservoir cup with the trap doors in it, so that it's always in liquid. You go around corners and stop and things like that. So there's a cup in the middle, and it has all kinds of check valves, and that's also where all the grease or butter will accumulate, and it makes it restrictive, and that pump has to suck, and it'll suck hard enough that it'll make the connections leak. And then it cavitates the pump, and it gets expensive.
Dan, you seem to be talking to the audience here as if they're going to start their own biodiesel plant, and maybe some of them aren't. But I read the thing in there, and I've got 2 diesels, a 2004.5 TDI and a 2000 F350 7.3. So I came here to find out what I should do to run biodiesel, because I've got a membership in the biodiesel co-op now.
Okay.
And I haven't filled up my tanks yet. And so I just thought, Gee, am I in the wrong room? And I thought, no,
Well,
I'm not.
actually, you're not. So, so far you're getting the direct shot about what it is that you need to know.
So when you talk about filtering, I'm just thinking about going to the card lock here and plugging the card in and filling my tank. But I'm thinking, well, maybe I should filter it as I fill my tank. I don't know. You've seen?
Yeah, is there a filter at the card lock?
I thought maybe you'd gone and seen it yesterday.
I hadn't.
I'm sure there is, but.
Well, see, that's the problem. You're sure that it is. You just have to look and see. Usually we tell people if they're on a trip, if they need to buy fuel somewhere, don't buy it at a gas station. Down in the States, diesel is only 1 to 2% of the vehicles out there. Gas stations make their money selling pot, beer, and cigarettes, not fuel. And so they have almost no motivation for maintenance, for filtering, for quality. And so you need to buy from a high volume retailer that's concerned about quality. So that would be a truck stop. People come in and they buy, over 100 gallons at a time. The commercial vehicle breaks down, there's going to be repercussions because it's an expensive rig, it's a working day, and a tow is like $800. So there's a chain of command of responsibility and liability. At your gas station, there is not. They just say, you didn't get that from us. So clean quality filtered fuel, usually the filter is a large canister. Say, filter, and it usually has how many microns and things, information on it. If you don't see it, it's going to be a smaller filter inside, and you can assume that it's not a 5 micron filter. You said you have what? A 2004 and?
It's a 2004 and a half. It's a 2005 nominally, but
okay.
The filter on it is a canister type, so that actually came
and that's a TDI?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that
came here in my TDI.
Okay. And what was your other one?
It's a 2000 F350.
Yeah.
On that F350, would you put a fuel filter heater on it?
The 350.
Is that there north?
It already has a heater on it.
I put a vehicle before the primary fuel.
Yeah, which is good, but if you have a primary before, it probably doesn't have any heat going to it. And as talk about cold weather performance, if something has an Arctic package on it, it has heat at both filters. How fuel works when it gets cold is that there's part of it that drops out. It looks like melted butter. It still has some solid and it has some liquid. What can happen is that the liquid comes through, but then the solid starts to plug the filter. Eventually you get to a point that the fuel will stop. And with the diesel, that's a big issue because most of the time it means getting towed in because you have air in the fuel system and you have an airlock. But most modern vehicles already have a heated filter.
Mid-90s F350?
The IDIs, some of them, it's generally not an issue because the filter is in a hot spot. The ones that have issues are the Sprinter and the Duramax, or lots of commercial vehicles, because the filters are out exposed. But it's pretty easy to add some heat. Yes, sir?
So one question that might help folks that are new to biodiesel is what do you need to do for a vehicle that's been running diesel, unknown quality for a long period of time? You want to go fill up your first time with biodiesel, knowing that fuel tank is probably going to just drop all kinds of stuff. What would you recommend as a protocol for somebody?
Generally what we recommend, you can probably go to our website and take a look at it. We give people a brochure that talks about it. But for a general rule of thumb is that we say that go through 2 tanks of fuel and then change your filter and then look to see what's inside the filter. And if there's anything inside of it, you know that there's more in the tank. Changing the filter does not clean the tank. Yeah, there are tons of people that say, but I just put a filter on it, but you also just put dirty fuel in it. Yeah, or anytime the vehicle runs any differently at all. There's lots and lots and lots of mechanics that will change an injection pump before they'll change a fuel filter. It's, you know, when in doubt, change the filter. Make sure that it has lots of good quality, clean filtered fuel. If it doesn't, game over. And there's no use proceeding to any other diagnosis before it has that. Yeah, and with the, you know, the Volkswagen, you don't need to do anything to it. The Ford, you don't need to do anything to it other than make sure that it has lots of good quality, clean filtered fuel by filter changes. Yeah, the later Fords had 2 filters, one underneath. That was a 6-liter. Those are problematic. But you just have one on the top.
That's it. I was going to ask you that because I thought maybe there's another one I don't even know about.
Yeah.
I change that one annually, mostly because I only run the thing for 6 months a year.
Yeah, and yeah, and you should, if something doesn't get run very much, you need to run additives.
Yeah, that's another question. If we go to Mexico in winter, so we leave our vehicles here.
Yeah.
Should
you have to?
Should I put
to run additives?
Like the Raycor Bioside?
It's, you know, people say, oh, I put in additive, but they didn't read the bottle to see what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
It, you know, that's like eating food. Yeah, if
so what additive would you put in?
Preservative.
Okay, well the additive I have been using is the Raycor Bioside.
Okay, that keeps it from growing stuff in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not good enough?
No.
Okay.
You're not preserving the fuel?
Yeah.
Well, if you're with the co-op, see what kind of additives they use putting in the fuel already. So the co-op maybe adding something.
Yeah.
So on our fuel, we put an additive in there to extend the shelf life.
Yeah. As a general rule of thumb, if you're going to be gone for 6 months, don't leave biodiesel on it.
Just leave petrodiesel and the biocide.
Yeah, biocide and an antioxidant, a preservative. And yeah, because there are tons of people, you know, we didn't realize this, but there are tons of people that'll fill up and then they'll have that fuel for months. We'll get a call, you know, fill up in September, and then November they call me up saying my fuel gelled. I said, well, you know, you have 35-degree fuel out, and it's 24 degrees.
So biodiesel's got a shorter life expectancy.
Well, not really necessarily. Gasoline is only formulated for the season. It has different properties. Diesel is also, you know, not quite as much, but you know, it's an expensive vehicle. Don't take any risks. You know, consider it like food. Yeah, preservative, additive, seasonally appropriate fuel. Yeah, you know, leave some out. You know, what happens to vegetable oil? You leave it out.
Thumbs up.
Yeah. If you leave your lawnmower or outboard motor, you know, what happens to it? It turns to varnish. Diesel does the same thing. And it's just that, you know, it doesn't. Fuel is dark and mysterious. Most people have no idea what it looks like. Because, you know, you can hear it, you can smell it, and you put your key in the car and the car goes. That's it. And so, you know, they've been doing that for years. And so, if there's contaminant in there, they say, well, it can't be. You know, I've been doing this forever. But there's all kinds of stuff that happens to regular diesel fuel. It gets particulates, it has stuff drop out, acid numbers change, it causes issues.
Would you expect on a B20 blend or thereabouts, used it in an F350 for a couple of months now, would it also have some of that solvent effect?
Some.
Because one of the things that was an indication of, or I read somewhere that your fuel filter was played up, was that at high speeds it starts cutting out?
You know, we've seen anything from no symptoms at all, and then it just, one time it doesn't start, to symptoms like that.
Because that's what I'm experiencing, and so I had the fuel filter changed this week because my brother was taking it on a long 1,000-mile trip.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to change the filter first.
Yeah.
Because I think it's starting to clean itself out, even though it's only V20.
Did it make a difference?
I don't know. He's been driving for 2 days now.
Yeah.
So he hasn't called me and said he's stuck somewhere.
Yeah. What vehicle is that in?
It's a 93 F350.
Okay, so that's an IDI. Yeah.
And IDI is?
Indirect, not a power stroke. So it's not the electronically controlled one, but you know, and that's something that, you know, we talk about, you know, reasonable expectations. You know, to fix something like that on the road, yeah, you know, can be a major hassle. You know, we had a tire problem on the way up here. That was a major hassle. It screwed things up. So, encourage people to take care of these things before the road trip. And, you know, if it's too big to push off to the side of the road,
with the trailer,
yeah, yeah, then you'll want to make sure that it's in good shape. And you know, the Power Stroke, you'd be surprised how complex that thing is. It is so complex. It's amazing. On the older ones, the injectors are 120 volt AC controlled. They are hydraulically powered by high pressure engine oil.
3,000 psi.
Yeah, and yeah, it's actually, you know, it's actually higher than that. It's a electro-hydraulic cylinder pump. And then all the computer stuff that does all that. And drivers and everything. And if it breaks down on the road, it's expensive. It's, you know, it's very common to have repair bills for stuff like that of $8,000 to $12,000, but not on a 93. Yes, sir.
Do you have any experience with the newer model diesels, the trucks that run with the DPF filters, and also ones with the urea?
Not too much. We so that, yeah, anything TPF diesel particulate filters, you know, pretty much like in the video there of the TDIs. We had some experience during 2008 and 9. Fleets were getting replaced with the Duramaxes, and the crankcases were filling up with fuel. We never, that was a landscaping company. We lost them as a customer, and did not hear if that was because there was something wrong with the truck, or if there was a problem with that. So,
Can I ask what your vehicle that was?
I think that was a 2008. And so we're generally not recommending those. We have some of the some newer Dodges, the Cummings. Those seem to be okay, but once again, those are susceptible to plug filter. You just want to make sure that you don't plug it. Tiny filter, doesn't have the primary. Which one are you running?
Oh, I run the 5.9s. I was curious about the 6.7s, the Cummins.
Yeah, there's some of those that come in non-event. So yeah, I haven't heard anything bad. But the
are those ones run with the urea too? Or?
Yeah, not a huge amount of those. Yeah, so you just might Google problems with those. But you know, Cummins is generally one of the best.
Dan, I had a question about engine oil. I've been using Amsoil for years, and I've been a dealer, and I'm not anymore. But
yeah,
it's good oil. It's expensive. But what are the implications or repercussions
with your 2004.5 of pump deuce Volkswagen? It has to have the Volkswagen spec number, which is 505.01. It has to have it.
So for me, that means Castrol Syntec.
Yeah.
540.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a number of different oils that have spec number, but whatever you use, and I think there's an Amsoil that has it now too.
Yes, it is. There's
The DEO, so whatever you use has to have it.
Yeah.
I'm using Series 3000 5W30 in the Volkswagen right now.
What's that?
It's a Series 3000 Amsoil 5W30.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
The pump deuces, PDs, they have a problem with camshaft wear, which is why they have the special oil spec, and they have a problem with camshaft wear even if you use the right oil. So if you don't use it, you're certainly going to have an issue with that. We also recommend the heavier oil, so that'd be the 540.
Is that a cam in the pump or the cam?
The camshaft and the cylinder head. Yeah, and so you should probably do some motor oil analysis when you change that.
Yeah, it's due for a change anyway, so that's no problem.
Yeah.
What about in the F350? What my question was really pointed at was there's always blow-by in the diesel, and I've been using the new Amsoil filter in the F350, and it keeps the oil clean for like 5,000 or 6,000 miles. An incredible filter.
Yeah.
Relative to the Ford stock filter, which lasts for about 1,000 kilometers as far as the oil getting dirty. But what about vegetable oil blow-by? Is that going to be, will that gum up my oil, or what?
Depends on how you use it and how you drive it. The times that if you use it for a whole bunch of short trips, then yes. If you use it, you know, as a diesel should be used, then no. We've only seen one case of that was bad. It was a Sprinter that was used as a taxi, and they just waited until the light in the dash to change the oil, which was something like
18,000 miles.
Yeah. And I couldn't get separate the filter has a plastic cap and then an element. It was glued together, and I broke the cap trying to get the element off. And there was stuff that was, you know, very similar to envelope glue everywhere. Yeah, don't risk it. You know, both of those motors are motor oil sensitive, so I would read up on that motor particular. It has to have the 50501, 530. Do motor oil testing, and you know, maybe do testing on the other one too if you're concerned about that. But if you're using a diesel for short trips, you're not doing yourself any favors or the motor any favors.
What's your definition of short trip?
Glad you asked that. Yeah. My definition of a short trip is to reach operating temperature under load for 10 minutes, minimum. So that means your temperature gauge has come up to operating temperature, which is just under 200 degrees, and then everything else has also reached temperature. One of the issues with motor oil dilution is that with regular diesel, it has a flash point of about 130 degrees. You know, motor oil can get you know, over 200 degrees easily, and so it'll evaporate out. Biodiesel has a flash point closer to 400 degrees, and hopefully your motor oil isn't getting that hot. So it won't flash out of there, which is why, you know, they're concerned about dilution. You know, in Europe, they like to do 15,000 mile. So I could see an issue with that, especially if you do a bunch of short trips. But they generally don't use short trips, and it looks like I'm down to 1 minute.
Really?
Yeah. Any more questions?
Do you have any faith in the newer synthetic oils extending the okay duration of oil change?
I do, but I don't have much faith in the owners.
You know what?
In the owners of the vehicles. So I think extended is fine. You know, I do that. I go, you know, 10, 15,000 miles. But I drive up and down a mountain on the highway, and you know, it gets up to temperature. You know, highway miles are almost free, but if you have somebody, you know, it should really be how many key cycles it goes through. And motor oil testing is it's easy, and it's common in industry. And that would be a very good thing to do. But
So where do you go to get that done?
there are places all over. Chevron does it. Can you think of any?
Oh, I think.
Blackstone.
Blackstone.
You get a sample kit and you send it in by mail to the lab, and then they send it back to report that.
Yeah. Truck stops will have them.
What's your TDI oil of choice then?
We use a German Lubermoly. Just pretty much whatever that we can get a hold of that has that spec number on. AMSOIL is probably just fine, but you have to make sure that it has that. And motor oil testing is good, but you know, if it's been used for short trips or hasn't had good oil changes, it's going to need a camshaft. That affects the emissions.
My wife insisted on Castrol 5W40, which was the spec, but it doesn't act like 5W40. And I put a different 5W40 in there and had a lot less power, which I thought, well, that's obviously higher viscosity oil. There's something different about it.
Yeah.
So we switched back to that, but I always thought, I kind of heard rumors that their Castrol Syntec isn't really a synthetic.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff about that. You know, what defines a synthetic and what doesn't. Most of the dealers use Castrol. You know, if the AMSOIL's got that number on it, it's probably fine. But the 5W40 is what you should use if you don't want to replace your camshaft.
Okay.